So this is the GoPro MAX2. We've been waiting a long time for this 360 camera. And today we're finally going to find out how good it really is. This video does not contain any paid sponsorship and I bought the GoPro MAX2 with my own money. If it has any weaknesses, we'll find out today. The best way to do this is to compare it with what is certainly the best known 360 camera on the market, the Insta360 X5. And no, I'm not being paid by Insta360 for this video either. Incidentally, you can already find a detailed comparison between the Insta360 X5 and the DJI Osmo 360 on my channel. Personally, I prefer to compare only two cameras, otherwise there is too much information and data and you quickly lose track. There are 10 categories that determine the quality of a 360 camera. And there is 1 point for the winner of each category. And in the very first category, the MAX2 shows a clear strength in this comparison. It is significantly smaller than the X5. As you can see, it also does not have the elongated shape of the X5. In terms of form and overall design, apart from the grooves on the front, it looks very similar to the first GoPro Max from 2019. And as we will see later, the MAX2 has something else in common with the first Max. Although the MAX2 is smaller than the X5, it weighs about the same, only 5 grams less than the X5. In terms of form factor alone, the elongated shape of the X5 fits well with a selfie stick. But on a helmet, the elongated shape is rather disadvantageous, and the shape of the MAX2 is better suited for this. What I also like is that the MAX2 not only has a 1/4 inch thread on the bottom, but also the usual GoPro fingers. This is especially useful if you want to use the camera in single lens mode. Of course, there is also a small adapter for the X5. On both cameras, you can replace the lenses yourself if they get damaged. This is great and is an important distinguishing feature for both cameras compared to the Osmo 360. The lens cover of the GoPro MAX2 can even be easily unscrewed and replaced by hand. On the X5 it's not difficult, but it's more cumbersome and requires a lens replacement kit that includes its own tool. Personally, I'm a little skeptical about the ease of replacing the lens on the GoPro. Lens stitching is a delicate matter and even a minimal deviation in the incidence of light can cause problems with lens stitching. But we'll find out right away if there are actually any stitching problems. Overall, the GoPro MAX2 definitely looks very compact and robust. However, the smaller form factor also means that the MAX2 has a significantly smaller display. The X5's display is not only significantly larger, but also brighter, which is an advantage when it comes to operation. In addition, the X5 is waterproof up to 10 meters without an additional dive case, while the MAX2 is only waterproof up to 5 meters. Nevertheless, for me, this category goes to the GoPro MAX2. Of course, image quality is by far the most important category in this comparison. With the exceptions that I explicitly mention, all of these shots were taken using the default settings and have not been edited. The result will therefore look exactly the same for most users. I'll comment on the comparison shots, but please take a close look at them and form your own opinion. Write me in the comments if you think I'm wrong, because some opinions can also be subjective. I was very surprised when I read the specs of the MAX2. At 1/2.3 inches, the sensor is not only significantly smaller than the sensor of the X5, it's exactly the same size as the sensor of the first GoPro Max. For comparison, even the X3 had a larger sensor than the MAX2. Yes, sensor size isn't everything when it comes to image quality, but it's definitely important. A larger sensor can not only capture more light, but also more color information, and normally results in better dynamic range and less noise in dark areas. GoPro advertises that the MAX2 is the only 360 camera with true 8K resolution. The resolution of the MAX2 should therefore be higher than that of the X5. This means that the MAX2's sensor has more pixels on a significantly smaller area. Apart from that, the MAX2 has a maximum bitrate of 120 megabits per second, while the X5 has a maximum bitrate of 180 megabits per second. Apparently, you can use GoPro Labs to increase the bitrate on the MAX2 to 300 megabits per second. Currently, however, the Labs firmware for the MAX2 is not available for download, only for the first Max. But all these are just specs. What ultimately matters is how the shots look. And as you've already seen, the MAX2's shots don't look bad in a direct comparison. In many of these recordings, the shots actually look very similar, at least when it's very bright and the lighting conditions are very good. The colors don't differ that much either. As I said, these shots were taken with the standard color profile on both cameras. When green tones appear, they look slightly more yellow on the X5. The blue tones also differ slightly. In addition, the X5's image appears slightly sharper. Incidentally, the digital sharpness can be reduced on both cameras. And although the MAX2 appears to have the higher resolution, the MAX2's image does not show more detail, as you can see here in the magnification. However, the X5 has a few clear strengths in a direct comparison. When the lighting conditions become a little more difficult and it is no longer so bright, the X5 exposes the image much better. A cloudy sky is enough for this. The X5's image is brighter, has a significantly better dynamic range and looks clearly better. And although this shot was taken in the early afternoon, you can already see image noise with the MAX2, and the disadvantages of the smaller sensor are noticeable. The X5 also handles distortion better. The standard field of view Mega was used for this shot. This is an extremely wide field of view with greatly reduced distortion. Take a look at the poles on the sides. There is nothing really comparable for the MAX2. If you select linear when reframing, this results in an extremely strong crop and reduced image quality. And if you reduce the distortion manually, the image is pulled outwards and naturally at the sides and does not look good. And indeed, the MAX2 does have stitching problems. Right next to the hand where the stitching line is, you can see that the stitching is not always optimal and sometimes leads to shifts. This is not always noticeable and it depends on the shot whether it is actually distracting. But as I said, the simple replacement of the lens cover is a practical solution, but it could also cause the problem. Apart from this issue, the invisible selfie stick effect and the stitching look decent even in direct comparison. But the GoPro Max also has an advantage over the X5. Similar to the Osmo 360, it not only supports 10-bit color, but also has a very flat log profile, while the X5 only has a flat color profile with slightly less saturation. Here you can see a direct comparison. The log profile is well suited for color grading, or if you want to match the colors of different cameras. On the other hand, the X5 with adaptive tone offers a very special shooting mode that can dynamically adjust exposure and contrast depending on the reframing, automatically producing a high contrast image with a wide dynamic range. This is very cool because the image created with adaptive tone has a very high contrast look and is more reminiscent of the recordings of a conventional action camera and less of a 360 camera, whose recordings often look a bit flat because the exposure has to be suitable for all angles. Here you can see a comparison between a shot with adaptive tone and a log shot from the MAX2. The log shots were converted with the GoPro LUT. And only the X5 has an HDR mode for improved dynamic range. This is useful for situations where there are very bright and dark areas at the same time. But the HDR mode of the X5 is only available in 5.7K and not in 8K. But even at this resolution, the footage still looks crisp and good. Overall, for me, the X5 is the clear winner in the image quality category. I would only prefer the GoPro for heavy color grading when shooting in very good lighting conditions. While the MAX2 takes good shots in good lighting conditions, this is absolutely not the case in low light. Here, the disadvantages of the very small sensors simply become apparent. I think GoPro is well aware of this, of course. In fact, they advertise the Max as the best 360 camera for action, not as the best 360 camera in general. This is also evident in the fact that unlike the X5, the MAX2 does not have its own recording mode for low light. The recordings from the GoPro Max not only have significantly more image noise, they also have less detail and the colors look worse. All of this is mainly a result of the significantly smaller sensors. The GoPro recordings are also much too dark. If you decide to buy one of these two cameras, you should be aware of this. The MAX2 is only suitable for good lighting conditions. It's also not particularly well suited for indoor shots or virtual tours. This point goes to the X5. High frame rates are particularly advantageous for action cameras, as they enable cool slow motion shots. The frame rate options are very similar for both cameras. Both can shoot in 8K at up to 30 frames per second. For 50 or 60 frames per second, you have to reduce the resolution to 5.7K or 5.6K on the MAX2, respectively. Here you can see a direct comparison in this resolution. While the X5's 5.7K 60 recording still looks very good, the MAX2 loses a lot of image quality in this setting. For really good slow motion shots, You need a higher frame rate. In 4K, the Max shoots at up to 100 frames per second, while the X5 shoots at up to 120 frames per second. And this is where the superiority of the X5 becomes even more apparent. The Max2's recording is hardly usable, while the X5 still produces acceptable image quality even in 4K 120. This means that GoPro does not live up to its claim of being the best 360 camera for action, because a good action camera takes good slow motion shots. 1 point for the X5. In single lens mode, you can use both cameras like a conventional action camera. You get a flat shot that you don't have to reframe, and that works on both cameras in 4K at up to 60 frames per second. The X5 also has its own pure video mode in single lens mode for better shots in low light. And of course, the X5 also performs better in low light in single lens mode due to its larger sensors. Although I personally don't think the difference is as big here as it is in 360 mode. In addition, the X5 also features the Me mode in single lens mode. In this mode, a 360 recording is taken and reframed in the camera. The result is a reframed flat clip that you can use immediately. However, this is only possible at up to 2.7K. The shots look quite good, and unlike in standard single lens mode, come with an invisible selfie stick effect. The Max2 selfie mode reframes the image, but does not save a flat clip. Similar to 4K recordings in Me mode, you still have to stabilize and export the 360 recording in the app. Here you can see a comparison between the results of the Me mode and the selfie mode on the GoPro. This category also goes to the X5. To be honest, I would like to give the GoPro a few more points, but it's not possible in this category. The small form factor of the Max2 not only leads to disadvantages in image quality, but also to disadvantages when it comes to battery life and overheating. At 1960 mAh, the Max2's battery has a significantly lower capacity than the X5's 2400 mAh battery. In 8K 30, the Max2 shoots for about 1 hour and 2 minutes, while the X5 shoots for 1 hour and 36 minutes. And that's not all. The X5 also has an endurance mode that allows for extended runtime, and the X5 also charges the battery significantly faster. In addition, the Max2 has an overheating problem. Yes, whether this is really a problem depends largely on how you use it, because if there is wind, such as when biking or skiing, you won't have any overheating issues with either camera. But for static shots, the situation is different. Here in the office, at only 19 degrees Celsius, the Max2 in 8K 30 only shoots for 33 minutes before it overheats. The X5 shoots until the battery is empty. In summer, when it's very hot, the X5 will be the better choice. 1 point for the X5. If you really want to have better audio quality, you need to use external microphones. For the Insta360 X5, there is the Mic Air, and it also supports the DJI Mic Mini or the Mic 2. And it's really surprising that the GoPro MAX2 does not support external microphones. It only supports headsets, just like the AirPods. But to be honest, the audio quality with the AirPods is not that great. So the Max2 is not really the best solution for vlogging. Not only can the X5 suppress wind noise better, but the voice enhancement setting also produces a much clearer voice recording. This point goes to the X5. When it comes to accessories, GoPro also has a hard time in this comparison. Accessories are extremely important for a 360 camera. You want to be able to mount your camera in as many different ways as possible and of course, get the most out of your camera. Insta360 offers a huge number of mounts and accessories. Many of these mounts can also be used with the Max2 without any problems. However, some important accessories are only available for the X5. For example, ND filters are only available for the X5. Only the X5 has an invisible dive case for taking 360 shots underwater. You should be aware that this does not work without a special dive case. This means that you cannot take 360 shots underwater with the Max2. The Dive Case Pro is now also available for particularly clear underwater shots for the X5. Only the X5 has a microphone adapter, a quick card reader, a utility frame, a remote with a preview image, a mini remote and a thermogrip cover. While I can imagine that ND filters will eventually be available for the Max2, I don't think this will be the case for the dive case, as it is very complicated to manufacture. Currently, Insta360 is the only manufacturer offering an invisible dive case for 360 underwater shots. This category clearly goes to the X5. The Max2 is a camera that has hardly any special or innovative features. It offers the familiar GoPro modes, vehicle lights and light painting, and it has a POV and selfie mode that produce a reframed 360 recording, but you can achieve the same result in the Insta360 app with a single tap, without having to select a specific mode when recording. Probably the only really useful additional feature of the MAX2 is its internal GPS. For GPS data, you have to use the X5 with a remote or connect it to your smartphone while recording. On the other hand, the X5 has a number of special features that the MAX2 doesn't have. For example, gesture control or twist to shoot to start recording by turning the stick. The bullet time mode, which creates this special effect. The Instaframe mode, which not only saves a 360 recording, but also a reframed flat clip. Or the AI Highlights Assistant, which automatically captures important highlights for long recordings. This category also goes to the X5. And then there is the topic of software. This is one of the most important categories when it comes to 360 cameras. You have to reframe every 360 shot, which means you can't use the camera without an additional reframing app. There is a desktop app and a smartphone app for both cameras. I had expected GoPro to completely revamp the desktop app player for the release of the MAX2. Unfortunately, that was not the case. With the Player app, you can only reframe a shot using keyframes. No tracking feature, no other editing options, nothing. Therefore, the desktop app cannot be compared in any way to the Insta360 app, which is a complete video editing tool. If you want to reframe on your desktop, you should not choose the MAX2. The GoPro smartphone app is much better, offering a tracking feature, image editing, and filters. It also has a motion frame feature and predefined camera movements. However, all of this is also available in the Insta360 app. And the GoPro app has one major disadvantage. You have to download the 360 recordings locally to your smartphone in order to reframe them. This takes additional time and could quickly fill up your smartphone's storage. With the Insta360 app, this is not necessary. The Insta360 app also has a complete video editing feature and a variety of additional effects under ShotLab or FlashCut. So this category also clearly goes to the X5. And so the X5 wins 9-1 and is clearly the better camera in my opinion. Now many people will get upset again and claim that this video is subjective, sponsored, dishonest, and so on. But how would you seriously justify that the MAX2 is the better choice in this comparison? Maybe because it's significantly cheaper, but that's not the case either. The MAX2 costs $500. While the X5 costs $550. You'll find a link to both cameras in the video description. And if you use the link for the X5, you'll get a free double lens replacement kit worth $45 and 1 free year of the Insta360 Plus cloud service for 1 terabyte, which is worth more than $100. And in addition, the X5 is on sale until October 16th and costs 10% less. In other words, also $500. Of course, I could be completely wrong, but I would only go for the MAX2 if you mainly shoot in very good lighting conditions and the GoPro colors and color grading with GoPro Lock are important to you. In that case, the smaller form factor of the MAX2 also offers an advantage. In all other cases, I would go for the X5 or perhaps the Osmo 360, and the comparison between the X5 and the DJI Osmo 360 is much more exciting. You can also find a detailed video on my channel. Take a look, it's interesting. So what do you think? Have I overlooked something? If so, write in the comments. There will be more videos on the X5 and the MAX2, so stay tuned and see you next time.